Words are important. Jargon or special language says people with disabilities are different. When you use professional jargon when talking with or about people with disabilities, such as toileting, individual, or special needs, it can act as a separator. Instead, use everyday language, words, and phrases you would use when talking about coworkers, friends, and family. Be mindful of phrasing. You do not feed someone, you assist them with eating. You do not bathe someone, you provide assistance with bathing. When talking about people with disabilities, refrain from using words and terms such as retarded, sometimes referred to as the R word, special, crippled, damaged, defective, wheelchair-bound, or people who suffer from a disability. As a DSP, it is also important to avoid using ownership language. Examples of ownership language include phrases like my guys or our individuals. It is important to remember that the people you support are not yours or your agency's. It is also important, when talking about people without disabilities, to not refer to them as normal or healthy people. Using these terms can often make people with disabilities feel as though there is something wrong with them or that they are abnormal. When talking about people with disabilities, first ask yourself if including the disability or diagnosis is even necessary. If it is, use people-first language. As the term implies, say the person first and the disability second. Below are examples of people-first language. People with developmental disabilities. Audrey has cerebral palsy. They have a learning disability. Herbert uses a wheelchair to get around. Dennis has autism. Carla has a brain injury. Keep in mind that people with disabilities may choose to identify themselves using their disability first. This is their choice. As professionals, DSPs should use person-first language and should not correct the people they serve on how they choose to identify themselves. What is a developmental disability? A developmental disability is a severe, chronic disability that manifests before the age of 22, is likely to continue indefinitely, and is attributable to a mental or physical impairment or a combination of mental and physical impairments other than those solely caused by mental illness. In other words, a person's disability is caused by mental or physical impairments and begins to show symptoms or effects before the person turns 22, even if it is not clinically diagnosed until later in the person's life. There are many different types of developmental disabilities. This section is designed to be an overview of some of the common developmental disabilities of the people you may serve. This section cannot tell you everything that you need to know about the person or people you will support. DSPs must read a person's Individual Service Plan, or ISP, to know specifics on how a person's disability affects the services they require. When reviewing this section, keep in mind that if a person has communication challenges, it does not necessarily mean they have an intellectual disability. Fetal alcohol syndrome disorders. Fetal alcohol syndrome disorders, or FASDs, are a group of conditions that can occur in a person whose mother drank alcohol during pregnancy. These conditions can affect learning and physical development. Signs and symptoms of FASD may include hyperactive behavior, learning disabilities, vision or hearing problems, problems with the heart, kidney, or bones, and poor memory. Autism spectrum disorder. Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, can cause significant social and communication challenges. People who are on the spectrum can have a variety of different learning, thinking, and problem-solving abilities. Some people with ASD need a lot of help in their daily lives, while others need less. Signs and symptoms of ASD may include avoiding eye contact and wanting to be alone, having trouble understanding other people's feelings, avoiding talking about their feelings, repeating actions over and over again, and having trouble adapting to routine changes. ASD and communication. Not every person on the spectrum has difficulties with language and communication. For those that do, there are some patterns of language use and communication challenges, including delayed speech or no speech, difficulty expressing needs or processing language, difficulty understanding nonverbal clues, including facial expressions, scripting or repetition of words, phrases, or intonations, sometimes taken from movies, books, or something else someone has said, and literal interpretations of language. Cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy, or CP, is a group of disorders that affect a person's ability to move, maintain balance, and maintain posture. Although CP does not get worse over time, a person's symptoms can change over their lifetime. Signs and symptoms of cerebral palsy may include stiff muscles, poor balance and coordination, and uncontrollable movements. Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a genetic disorder caused when cell division results in an extra full or partial copy of chromosome 21. This extra genetic material causes the developmental changes and physical features of Down syndrome. People with Down syndrome have some of the same features, such as a short neck, short height, or poor muscle tone, yet each person with Down syndrome is unique. A person's intellectual and developmental issues may be mild, moderate, or severe. Often, language is delayed and both short and long-term memory are affected. Some people with Down syndrome are healthy, while others have significant health issues, such as heart defects. Understanding Ohio's support system. There are many different people and agencies involved with supporting people with developmental disabilities, including the federal government, the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, local county boards of developmental disabilities, and providers of services. The federal government. Most of the services and supports received by people with developmental disabilities are paid through Medicaid waivers. A Medicaid waiver is a program that allows people with developmental disabilities to receive services in their homes and communities rather than a long-term care facility. These waivers are paid through a combination of federal, state, and local dollars. For every dollar spent, about 60 cents comes from the federal government. The other 40 cents come from either the state or local county boards of developmental disabilities.
Hello, my name is Jeff Davis, and I'm Director of the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities. It's nice to be with you. I appreciate your sharing your time with me. We're here today in your training to talk a little bit about the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities and what it does. In Ohio, we're very lucky, I think, to have a single state agency that is created specific to the purpose of supporting individuals with developmental disabilities. That's unique. It doesn't happen across this country. But in Ohio, the wisdom is to have something, because we believe enough in the support system to have an agency dedicated to that purpose. And so what is it that we do? Well, overarchingly, we set vision. This is where we want our system to go. How do you best support individuals? And that's our goal. And so we'll, as we learn, we adapt, and we set the vision for our system. And behind that vision comes things like Ohio law, Ohio rules and regulations that we all follow, that we set in place so that we can help you on the ground, help our providers, help our county government partners put a system together that does the best it can. And so you'll see us in varying ways over time, whether it's through rules that you see, whether it's through the individual plans that you deal with, whether it's other regulations. You'll see us and you'll feel us, and we want to help, right? Support you in every possible way we can. The other thing that we do is we pay bills. We pay providers so that you can get paid. We try and do that timely, and when we do that often to make sure that the services are provided, they're continually provided, and that there's resource there, obviously, so that we can do the jobs that we're all required to do. And then behind that, of course, there are other pieces to the puzzle. How do we get better, right? How do we help you become better? How do we acknowledge both what you're doing and what we need to continue to do, again, so that we can always improve, always improve. So there are a lot of things sort of behind the scenes that we do, and that's the process. That's making sure that we have enough providers. That's making sure our providers are doing, we hope, what is supposed to be done. So there is a piece of the puzzle called compliance to do that. But overarchingly, we hope it's a very positive interaction. We mean that it's a very positive interaction, that we're supporting you, because what you do on the ground is the most important of all. And I know that and recognize that. So we want to be a support. We also provide direct supports ourselves. So we have 8 developmental centers as part of our department where we support individuals, right, in facilities, oftentimes those with pretty significant challenges, sometimes those individuals that maybe the rest of the system isn't yet ready to support. So we do that as a piece, again, of that overall puzzle. And we are happy to do that. And sometimes some of those individuals you'll see ultimately as they transition out and into the community. So we're always moving, we're always adapting, and we're always trying to help. So if you would keep that in mind, believe it or not, we are here to help our system get better and better, to regulate our system, to pay for our system, but to hold hands with you and to make sure we're working together. So thank you for what you're about to do. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy it because it has its own rewards. So thank you again very, very much.
County Boards of Developmental Disabilities. Local county boards have many roles in the developmental disability services system, but 2 of the key roles are service and support administration and serving as investigative agents. A service and support administrator, or SSA, is a county board employee who, with the help of the person being supported, their family, providers, and other members of the person's team, completes an assessment that helps determine what services the person can and should receive. After the assessment, the SSA and other team members develop the Individual Service Plan, or ISP, which outlines the services and supports needed and how DSPs will provide those services. The SSA also finds funding, or how the person is going to pay for these services. Throughout the year, the SSA coordinates services and talks with the person, their family, and the providers to ensure the ISP is accurate, up to date, and is being followed. An investigative agent, or IA, is an employee of a county board, council of government, or developmental center whose main role is to receive and investigate all reported major unusual incidents, also called MUIs. An MUI is an incident that puts a person's health or welfare at risk. The role of an IA during an MUI investigation is determining what factors caused the MUI to take place and developing a prevention plan to reduce the likelihood of the MUI happening again. More about MUIs and the MUI process will be covered in the health and safety modules of this course. Service providers. In Ohio's service system, there are 2 different entities that provide services to people with developmental disabilities: agency providers and independent providers. Agency providers are companies that have at least 2 employees, while independent providers work for and by themselves. Direct Support Professional, or DSP. DSPs are responsible for supporting people day to day with routine personal needs, social support, and physical assistance in a wide range of activities. DSPs support a person's self-expression, self-worth, self-reliance, and decision-making. Describing the exact duties of a DSP can be difficult because the daily job duties of DSPs are as unique as the people they support. DSPs provide services to promote independence and to ensure that people are healthy and safe. The services and supports are described in a person's individual service plan, which will be covered later in this module. All services and supports are person-centered, which means they are focused on the specific needs and goals of the person being supported. A DSP may perform services in a variety of places and circumstances based on the person they are supporting and the services they are providing. Homemaker personal care, or HPC services, are provided in the person's home or community. With HPC, DSPs may provide support with daily living needs, such as getting dressed or making food, teaching and developing skills, and becoming more involved in their community. Other DSPs provide the Adult Day Services, or ADS service. ADS includes many service options to support people with their employment goals and adult day service needs. A DSP that provides ADS can help the person or people they are supporting to learn about a variety of things and connect to the community in a meaningful way, including, but not limited to, meeting and talking with new people, activities in their community, and available jobs in their area. From caregiving to connecting, the work of DSPs has evolved beyond providing basic needs and personal care as a caregiver and is now focused on DSPs seeing themselves as connectors who empower the people they serve in their everyday life and daily tasks. When in the community with the person you support, your actions can set positive or negative examples. For example, the person you are supporting can see you as a guide for how to act appropriately in different settings and situations. Your actions can also positively or negatively impact the perceptions of people in the community who interact with the person you are supporting. Another example would be if you are at the grocery store with the person you support and are walking in front of them. This can send an unintended message to observers that you are in charge of them. This could cause people to communicate with the person through you rather than speaking directly to the person. As a DSP, your actions and behavior have influence, both negative and positive. The Bill of Rights for people with developmental disabilities. People with developmental disabilities have the same rights as those without disabilities, but they have not always been afforded those same rights, independence, and protections. Because of this, the rights of people with developmental disabilities were written into Ohio law in September of 2000. 24 primary rights are listed in the rights of people with developmental disabilities. There are many rights not listed. The best way to recognize if a person you are supporting has a particular right is to ask yourself, do I have that right? The right to be treated at all times with courtesy and respect, and with full recognition of their dignity and individuality. The right to an appropriate, safe, and sanitary living environment that complies with local, state, and federal standards and recognizes the person's need for privacy and independence. The right to food adequate to meet accepted standards of nutrition. The right to practice religion of their choice or to abstain from the practice of religion. The right of timely access to appropriate medical or dental treatment. the right of access to necessary ancillary services, including but not limited to occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, and behavior modification and other psychological services. Click the Next button to continue. The right to receive appropriate care and treatment in the least intrusive manner. The right to privacy, including both periods of privacy and places of privacy. The right to communicate freely with persons of their choice in any reasonable manner they choose. The right to ownership and use of personal possessions so as to maintain individuality and personal dignity. The right to social interactions with members of either sex. The right of access to opportunities that enable people to develop their full human potential. Click the Next button to continue. The right to pursue vocational opportunities that will promote and enhance economic independence. The right to be treated equally as citizens under the law. The right to be free from emotional, psychological, and physical abuse. The right to participate in appropriate programs of education, training, social development, and habilitation, and in programs of reasonable recreation. The right to participate in decisions that affect their lives. The right to select a parent or advocate to act on their behalf. Click the Next button to continue. The right to manage their personal affairs based on individual ability to do so. The right to confidential treatment of all information in their personal and medical records, except to the extent the disclosure or release of records is permitted under Sections 5123.89 and 5126.044 of the Revised Code. The right to voice grievances and recommend changes in policies and services without restraint, interference, coercion, discrimination, or reprisal. The right to be free from unnecessary chemical or physical restraints. The right to participate in the political process. The right to refuse to participate in medical, psychological, or other research or experiments. Click the Next button to continue. Universal precautions. Universal precautions are a set of guidelines designed to protect both DSPs and the people they support from contact with infectious agents that could cause disease or illness. It is an approach that involves treating all human blood and body fluids as if they were infectious. Universal precautions also include guidelines on hand washing, personal protective equipment, cough etiquette, and surface disinfection. They are the basic level of infection control precautions that are to be used when providing support to someone. Hand washing. Hand washing is a major component of universal precautions and is the single most important practice to reduce the transmission of germs. DSP should wash hands with plain or antibacterial soap with clean running water. If soap and water are unavailable, use an alcohol-based hand sanitizer that contains at least 60% alcohol. Hand washing should be done if hands are visibly dirty, before, during, and after food preparation, before putting on and after taking off gloves, before eating, before and after caring for someone who is sick, before and after treating a cut or a wound, after assisting someone with personal care or hygiene, after using the toilet, after changing diapers or cleaning up a person who has used the bathroom, after coughing, sneezing, or blowing one's nose, after petting, playing with, or touching an animal, after handling pet food or treats, and after touching garbage. Hand washing steps. Wet your hands with clean, running water, either warm or cold, and apply soap. Lather your hands by rubbing them together with soap. Be sure to lather the backs of your hands, between your fingers, and under your nails. Scrub your hands for at least 20 seconds. Rinse your hands well under clean running water, with water running down toward your fingertips. Dry your hands using a clean paper towel, turn off the faucet with the paper towel, and then discard the paper towel. Personal protective equipment. Personal protective equipment, also called PPE, is specialized clothing or equipment that protects people against contact with potentially infectious materials. The proper use and disposal of PPE prevents exposure to germs and potentially infectious materials. Single-use disposable gloves. Wash hands before putting gloves on and after taking them off. Change gloves before providing care to another person. Dispose of gloves properly to avoid contamination. Never reuse gloves. Other protective equipment. In situations where splattering, smearing, or splashing of blood and body fluids might occur, wear a mask, goggles, or other face shields to protect the eyes, nose, and mouth. Personal eyeglasses are not considered adequate eye protection. Wear gloves and a gown to shield yourself from fluids. Avoid the contaminated area or wear shoe coverings when cleaning fluids from the floor. In case of an emergency, if mouth-to-mouth resuscitation is required, use resuscitation devices or mouth shields. A barrier can be improvised if correct protective equipment is not available, such as trash bags, grocery sacks, or other waterproof material. If you need help getting gloves, sharps disposal containers, biohazard bags, or CPR masks or shields, contact your supervisor, a pharmacy, your county board, or speak with the person's family or doctor's office. To prevent unexpected exposure, keep any broken skin covered with bandages or clothing. This includes cuts, scrapes, hangnails, patches of eczema, or other skin that is not intact or a solid barrier. Always know and follow your agency policies for the use and disposal of PPE. Sharps. Used needles, lancets, blades, and other sharp devices, known as sharps, can cut or prick the skin, exposing a person to germs or other potentially infectious materials. Never bend, break, or recap needles. Never remove used needles from disposable syringes. Never throw a sharp into the trash. Dispose of used sharps in labeled containers. The container should be labeled with the word sharps on all sides. When a sharps container reaches 3/4 full, close the lid and dispose of it promptly. Never clean up broken glass by hand. When handling sharps, move carefully. Give your full attention to what you are doing. Never use your hand or foot to push down the trash in any trash can or bag. Never place your hand inside or under a trash bag. Exposure and cleanup. Exposure. An exposure incident is an event in which a person's blood or bodily fluid has possibly entered another person's bloodstream through a point of entry. Points of entry include the eyes, nose, mouth, or any skin that is not intact. Responding to an exposure incident includes cleaning the area and reporting the exposure to a doctor and/or agency administrators immediately. Clean the area with running water, wash thoroughly with soap, and rinse well. The response to an injury or accident of a person receiving services, or DSPs, includes these steps. Treat all blood and body fluids as if they are infectious. Apply proper PPE and administer first aid. If the injury is life-threatening, emergency first aid should be given. If protective equipment is not available, items such as towels, clothing, bags can be used to prevent exposure when providing care. Once the person is stable, reduce possible contact with blood and body fluids by using techniques to avoid touching bodily fluids directly. Report any possible exposure to a doctor immediately. Cleanup. Spills of body fluids, feces, nasal and eye discharges, saliva, urine, and vomit should be cleaned immediately. Surfaces that may come in contact with body fluids must be either disposable or material that can be sanitized, such as a stainless steel countertop. Clean any visible fluid from surfaces with soap and water, then rinse. Wet or spray the entire surface with a bleach solution made fresh daily, comprised of a 1 to 9 solution. For example, 1/4 cup chlorine bleach to 2 1/4 cups of water. Let stand for 2 minutes. Air dry or wipe dry after 2 minutes. If using pre-made or store-bought disinfectant products, follow the directions on the label. Respiratory hygiene and cough etiquette. Respiratory hygiene and cough etiquette are terms used to describe infection prevention measures to decrease the transmission of illness. A respiratory infection is spread when a person who is infected with a virus coughs or sneezes. The droplets released from an ill person's cough or sneeze can travel for several feet, reaching the nose or mouth of others and causing illness. Viruses can spread easily from person to person through direct contact via touching or shaking hands. Droplets can also live for a short time on objects, such as bed rails, doorknobs, or wheelchairs. Since we do not always know who is infectious and who is not, respiratory hygiene and cough etiquette are very important components to protecting yourself and the people you support from illness. Use a tissue to cover your mouth and nose every single time you cough or sneeze. If a tissue is not available, cough into your inner elbow. Always turn your face away from people around you when coughing or sneezing. Place used tissues immediately in a trash can. Contaminated items. Dispose of diapers and material contaminated with blood in a plastic bag with a secure tie. To prevent leaks of contaminated fluid, place wet materials in a tied bag inside a second tied bag. Non-sharp contaminated disposable items such as used PPE and disposable rags or cloths saturated with blood or body fluids should be discarded into biohazard bags if available that are puncture resistant, leak proof, and labeled with a biohazard symbol or red in color. Types of MUIs. As you learned from the module Health and Safety Part 1, a major unusual incident, or MUI, is the alleged, suspected, or actual occurrences of an incident that poses a major risk to a person's health or safety. MUIs are categorized into 19 different types. MUI categories have different procedures to make sure they are investigated thoroughly and as part of a quality improvement process. Types of MUIs. Accidental or suspicious death. The death of a person resulting from an accident or suspicious circumstances. Attempted suicide. When a person physically attempts to take their own life and it results in emergency room treatment, inpatient observation, or hospital admission. Death other than an accidental or suspicious death. Death of a person by natural causes. Exploitation. The unlawful or improper use of a person's resources for monetary or personal benefit, profit, or gain. Failure to report. The failure to report abuse or neglect that resulted in a substantial risk of harm. Law enforcement. Any incident that results in the person being tased, arrested, charged, or incarcerated. Medical emergency. An incident where emergency medical intervention is required to save a person's life, including choking relief techniques, CPR, and the use of an AED, or automated external defibrillator, or epinephrine autoinjector. Misappropriation. The act of depriving, defrauding, or obtaining a person's property. Missing person. An incident where a person's whereabouts are unknown and they are believed to be at or pose a risk of harm to themselves or others. Neglect. An incident where there is a duty to provide a person with medical care, personal care, or other support or services, and the failure to do so results in serious injury or places that person or another person at risk of serious injury. Rights Code violation. Violation of the rights enumerated in Section 5123.62 of the Ohio Revised Code that creates a likely risk of harm to health or welfare. Sexual abuse. Unlawful sexual contact or conduct, including public indecency and voyeurism. Significant injury. An injury that is not considered abuse or neglect that results in a concussion, broken bone, and other serious injuries. Unanticipated hospitalization. Any admission or hospital stay over 24 hours that is not pre-scheduled or planned. Does not include hospital admissions associated with specific symptoms of conditions specified in a person's individual service plan, or ISP. Unapproved behavioral support. The use of a prohibited measure or the use of a restrictive measure not approved by a human rights committee that results in a risk of harm to the person's health and welfare. Verbal abuse. The use of words, gestures, or other communicative means to threaten, coerce, intimidate, harass, or humiliate. Peer-to-peer act. Exploitation, theft, or verbal, sexual, or physical act between two people served. A physical act regarding the peer-to-peer act MUI is a physical altercation that results in examination or treatment by a physician, physician assistant, or nurse practitioner, involves strangulation, bloody nose, bloody lip, black eye, concussion, or a bite that causes breaking of the skin, or results in a person being arrested, incarcerated, or the subject of criminal charges. Physical abuse. Physical force that is reasonably expected to result in harm. Prohibited sexual relations. Consensual sexual conduct or contact between a developmental disabilities employee and a person who is not their spouse, and for whom the developmental disabilities employee was employed or under contract to provide care or supervise the provision of care at the time of the incident. Some MUIs are required to be reported within 4 hours after the incident or discovery of the incident. Those are accidental or suspicious death, exploitation, misappropriation, neglect, peer-to-peer act, physical abuse, prohibited sexual relations, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, inquiry from the media regarding an MUI. Types of UIs. As you may recall, an unusual incident, or UI, is an unusual event that is not consistent with a person's routine or their ISP, but does not pose a major risk to a person's health or safety. Types of UIs. Dental injury, such as a chipped or loose tooth. Falls. For example, a person stumbles on the last step of a staircase and falls to the floor, but the person is not injured. Injury. An injury that is not a significant injury MUI. For example, someone gets their hand pinched in a closing door, causing a small laceration. Medication error. Medication error without a likely risk to a person's health and welfare. For example, a person is accidentally given a medication that was not prescribed for them, and there was little to no risk to the person. Overnight relocation. Overnight relocation due to fire, natural disaster, or mechanical failure. For example, there is a lightning strike on a home, power will be off for a week for repair, and the residents temporarily move to another house. Peer-to-peer act. Peer-to-peer act that is not an MUI. For example, two roommates get into an argument, and one picks up an object and throws it at the other, hitting their arm and causing a small scratch. Program implementation. Program implementation is the failure to carry out a person-centered plan when the failure causes minimal or no risk. For example, a person is left without supervision for 20 minutes, but their plan states that they cannot be without supervision for more than 15 minutes. There was no injury and minimal risk to a person's safety. Rights code violation. Rights code violation without a likely risk to a person's health and safety. For example, a person is told they cannot have a second glass of milk at dinner. Unapproved behavioral support. Unapproved behavioral support without a likely risk to the person's health and welfare. For example, a DSP redirects a person who is picking at a sore on their face by briefly placing their hands on top of the person's hands. The person does not resist. A community is a group of people who come together for a common reason. Some communities are based on a common interest, and others are based on geography, such as a neighborhood. It is common for people to belong to several communities. In the past, people with disabilities often had a presence in their communities, but may not have had opportunities to participate in, connect with, or contribute to their communities. Community integration involves people actively participating and having opportunities to engage and connect with others in meaningful ways. Community integration is not just using the library, going on a community outing, or attending a baseball game with a group of people with disabilities. Community integration is joining a book club at a local library, everyday life, or tailgating with fans before a game. DSPs empower and support people with developmental disabilities in connecting and developing relationships with their broader communities based on each person's unique strengths, interests, and preferences. Supporting people and encouraging independence includes spending time with them and learning about what inspires them. It also includes discovering their interests, talents, and skills. Here are some simple ways DSPs can support people in being connected to their communities. Help people locate and attend community events and activities that best reflect their interests. Attend places regularly so relationships have a chance to form. Encourage people to make purchases rather than purchasing items for them. Model what it looks like to be part of a community by being friendly and introducing yourself to others. Valued social roles. The more valued social roles a person has, the more chances they have to make friends, to be involved with different communities, and to access the good things in life. People fill a variety of social roles, both at home and in the community. Some examples of valued social roles are artist, employee, sports fan, neighbor, or spouse. As a DSP, it is important to focus on people's strengths and not their deficits as you support them to develop their own identities and play valued social roles. As a DSP, you can help someone turn their interests into social roles. For example, Brandy loves to garden. In the spring and summer, she spends most of her weekends pulling weeds, planting flowers, or laying down mulch. Gardening is a hobby for Brandy, and as her DSP, you can help Brandy turn her hobby into a valued social role. Talk with Brandy about joining a local gardening club, submitting her garden to be judged for a neighborhood lawn and garden competition, or sharing photos of her garden on Instagram or Facebook. Self-determination and self-advocacy. Self-determination. Self-determination is when people choose and set their own goals, work to reach their goals, and make decisions that affect their lives. According to the NADSP Code of Ethics, DSP should promote self-determination in physical, intellectual, emotional, social, and spiritual pursuits. This often means giving people with developmental disabilities dignity of risk, which is the right of a person to make an informed choice to engage in experiences meaningful to them and which are necessary for personal growth and development. Some experiences may come with negative consequences, such as disappointment and sorrow, but this is a natural part of life. Rather than protecting people with disabilities from negative consequences, DSP should support them to make informed decisions. This empowers people to experience the possibility of success and the natural risk of possible failure. Occasionally, support staff assume they know the outcome for people who dream too big. The dignity of risk asks that DSPs help people explore and reach for their dreams while keeping health and safety at the forefront of services. Scenario: supporting someone in choosing clothing. Mark is a DSP shopping for clothes with Jermaine. Jermaine is immediately drawn to a shirt with a crude graphic. Mark sees it and knows the graphic will upset others. First, Mark tries to understand what Jermaine likes about the shirt.
What do you like about this?
It makes me laugh, and I like the color.
And where are you thinking of wearing it?
Probably everywhere: home, work, and hanging out with my friends.
Mark explains to Jermaine what others may think or do if he wears the shirt in public.
And I'm not sure your boss would be very happy if you wore it to work. Maybe we should also look for clothes that we know won't upset your boss or coworkers. There are some shirts over there in the same color, but don't have graphics.
I'm still going to buy it. My friends will love it. I'll look for work shirts too.
Once Jermaine is informed and understands the possible consequences of purchasing and wearing the shirt, he makes the final decision. If he still wants to buy the shirt with the graphic, he can. It is his right to buy and wear the clothing of his choice. Unless the person you are supporting would be at or pose an immediate risk of harm to themselves or others, they have the right to decide for themselves. According to the NADSP Code of Ethics, it is a DSP's job to celebrate, accept, and learn from life's rich experiences with people through triumphs and failures. A DSP is not there to help people avoid failures, but to educate them and help them learn from their experiences. Self-advocacy. One part of self-determination is advocating for yourself, or self-advocacy. The first step people take towards self-advocacy is gaining knowledge about their preferences. Another step is to know their rights, both as a citizen and as a person with a disability. Then people can speak up for themselves and for the things that are important to them. There are multiple ways DSPs can support people to become self-advocates. One is incorporating decision-making into everyday activities, such as people deciding what to have for lunch or what movie to watch. Decision-making is like a muscle that needs to be used and exercised. Another way that a DSP can support people to advocate for themselves is realizing that not all communication is verbal, and people can speak up in a variety of ways. As a DSP, your responsibility is assisting people to know and learn about their strengths and needs. A DSP also needs to ensure they are aware of people's rights and can recognize when their rights are violated or not respected. As a DSP, become curious about the people you support. Learn alongside them about what they love, what they can do, and what's important to them. When people know their strengths, interests, and skills, they can make their own decisions, speak up for themselves, and live the lives they want.